When you're starting an online gaming company, one of the biggest, most crucial decisions you have to make has nothing to do with your tech or your branding or your marketing. Nope. It's about where you get your license. And this one choice, well, it tells a much, much bigger story about how the entire internet is growing up.
So picture this. Your platform is built, your team is hyped, but you are legally stuck at the starting line. You can't do a thing without a license. And the one you pick, that's your first big strategic bet. For years, this was an easy question to answer. But today, you're staring at a major fork in the road. Do you go with the established, well-known veteran, or do you take a chance on the scrappy rising star?
For the longest time, places like Curacao were pretty much the default choice. They were famous for their, let's say, relaxed rules and low costs. It made them the perfect launchpad for startups. But then, in 2023, the entire game was rewritten. Curacao has been a heavyweight in this space since way back in 1996. Anjouan jumped into the ring in 2005. But the moment that changed everything, the real earthquake, happened in September 2023. That's when Curacao decided, you know what? We're overhauling our entire model. They tightened the rules, and in doing so, they completely changed the landscape for every new company. So what was this big move all about? Well, Curacao set up a brand new and much stricter regulator, the Curacao Gaming Authority, or CGA. The whole point was to shake off its old reputation as a light-touch, easy-A kind of place and get serious about aligning with global standards. And that single decision, that is what created the founder's dilemma we're talking about today. So that brings us to the main event, Anjouan versus Curaçao. Let's really get into the nitty-gritty and break down the critical differences so we can figure out which license actually makes sense for what kind of business. This is the stuff every founder needs to know. And here it is, laid out plain and simple. On one side, you've got Curaçao, the veteran. The rules are strict, the cost is higher, but what you get is a solid, established infrastructure and a name that's recognized all over the world. Then you've got Anjouan, the upstart. It's way more flexible, it's faster, it's cheaper, but the infrastructure is still pretty basic, and its reputation is, well, a work in progress. Now let's talk about one of the most important factors, money, specifically taxes. Curaçao has a 2% tax, but, and this is the crucial part, it's 2% on net profits. That means after you've paid all your bills and expenses, they take 2% of what's left. Honestly, that's still incredibly competitive on a global scale. But then you look over at Anjouan. They offer a 0% tax on your gross gaming revenue. Let me repeat that, 0%. No tax on your top-line revenue at all. For a startup where every single dollar counts, a company trying to be as efficient as possible right out of the gate, this is a massive, massive incentive. The process to get the license tells its own story. In Curaçao now, it's all about deep vetting. You've got to set up a local company, pass these really rigorous compliance checks. We're talking anti-money laundering, know your customer, the whole shebang. And you have to commit to ongoing audits. It's a path built for long-term compliance and stability. Now compare that to Anjouan. The process there is, well, a lot more direct. They check out the key people on your team, you pay your fees, submit your plan, pass a basic tech audit, and you're pretty much good to go. It's a system that's clearly designed for speed and a much lower barrier to entry. Okay, so we've looked at all the data points. Let's put it all together. How do you actually figure out which one is for you? As a founder, how do you make the right call based on your specific goals? At the end of the day, it really boils down to this. Curaçao is now the clear choice for a more established company, one that needs instant credibility to lock in those crucial partnerships with payment providers and game developers. You pick it for long-term stability. Anjouan, on the other hand, is the perfect fit for a startup. You need to launch fast, you're on a tight budget, and you want as much operational freedom as possible to innovate and pivot. This quote just sums it up perfectly, doesn't it? That's the core decision right there. Are you going to invest in reputation and build on a solid, regulated foundation from day one? Or are you going to optimize for pure speed and financial efficiency just to get your incredible idea off the ground? Okay, so now let's pull the camera back. Let's zoom out, because this whole choice between Curaçao and Anjouan, it's not just some weird isolated issue in the gaming industry. It is a perfect little microcosm of a huge trend that's happening across the entire digital world. Curaçao's big pivot is really a sign of the times. For decades, a lot of the internet has operated like the Wild West, right? Unregulated, moving at lightning speed, with super low barriers to entry. What we're seeing now in gaming and everywhere else is the end of that era. Industries are maturing.
And with maturity comes regulation.
So this new digital frontier, it looks a little different. There's a much bigger focus on protecting consumers and building actual trust. And that, naturally, leads to higher barriers to get in the game, a real demand for corporate transparency, and a big strategic shift away from just growth at all costs toward building stable, sustainable businesses. And that leaves us with a final, really big question to think about. As the internet keeps growing up and as more places like Curacao tighten the rules, what happens to the innovators? Will there always be a place like Anjouan, an agile, Wild West alternative for the next wave of disruptive ideas? It's a fundamental question about the future balance between regulation and innovation online, and honestly, it's going to be fascinating to watch how it all plays out. Thanks for joining me.